Take a look at how JK Rowling played a part in toppling Scotland's most powerful man.
JK Rowling was able to defeat the Prime Minister of Scotland in one of the most epic cell phones I have ever seen.
The bitter battle between Scotland's First Minister Humza Yousaf and anti-trans activist JK Rowling has concluded.
End result, Prime Minister resigns.
I have therefore informed the SNP's National Secretary of my intention to stand down.
The First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf, well, he resigned this week. What brought him undone in the end?
First, there was the passing of hate crime laws.
Controversial new law aimed at cracking down on hate speech is now in effect in Scotland. You break this law if you communicate or behave in a way, quote, that a reasonable person would consider to be threatening or abusive.
Anonymous reporting can be wielded as a weapon.
With the First Minister inundated with complaints after the announcement of the new law.
Within 24 hours, nearly 4,000 complaints. Well, it turns out the majority of those complaints are for, wait for it.
But the story gets really interesting when the Prime Minister of Scotland is then reported for a speech that he made.
When the most senior positions in Scotland are filled almost exclusively by those who are white. Take my portfolio alone. The Lord President, white. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white.
And of course, you can make an anonymous complaint to the police, and the police have promised they will follow up every single complaint.
These hate speech laws are pathological because who gets to define what hate is?
Many of the complaints within the first 24 hours at least were against Scotland's First Minister for a speech he made in Parliament a couple of years ago.
The Solicitor General, white. The Chief Constable, white. Every Deputy Chief Constable, white.
Scotland is 96% white, and there are some very active people, particularly on social media, who are saying Hamza Yousaf's message was essentially racist. It was anti-white.
I think that was the brick that caused the wall to crumble.
The head of the Law Society, white. The head of the Faculty of Advocates, white.
If I was the Prime Minister of a country that was 98% purple, it would take some nerve for me to come out and give a speech. There's too many purple people here. Everywhere I look, I just see purple.
Every prison governor, white. And not just justice. The Chief Medical Officer, white. The Chief Nursing Officer, white. The Chief Veterinary Officer, white.
And everywhere I look now, there's purple. Well, okay, Warren, but 96% of the people in your country are purple, so maybe that's just a reflection of reality.
The Chief Social Work Advisor, white. Almost every trade union in this country headed by people who are white.
For many Scots who've reported you, goes back to a speech you made in 2020 where you went through a whole series of important senior public posts in Scotland which are held by white people.
In the wake of all these reports pouring in, reporting him for that speech, the Prime Minister is then asked about this by the BBC.
How do you feel about that?
So a couple of points to make. The description of those who reference that speech as hatred, I've not seen anybody who has described it in that way that isn't, frankly, part of the far right.
And he just dismisses this as though everyone who is pointing out the issues with that speech are just part of the far right and therefore they must not be contended with or listened to. This is the most common tactic that I see. We have two different types of people. One believes that there's no such thing as objective laws of reality and that everything's a social construct. And white men in the patriarchy have created this in order to hold on to power.
More broadly, he's been in hot water for many things, criminalizing hate speech, the trans issue. He was in the crosshairs of JK Rowling and all of that. So I think that's why this particular individual is gone.
And this conflict between the Prime Minister and a singular individual like JK Rowling, the fact that she could cause the Prime Minister of Scotland to resign. Yes, an individual with great reach and finances and power, but a power as a result of telling stories that deeply resonate.
These stories are deeply built into people. There's a reason that JK Rowling became the richest person in England she's richer than the Queen. She got rich by telling the story properly.
It's a testament to the power of a single individual who is willing to take a stand and enter the unknown voluntarily for to save something that they deeply care about. The person who first broke down Harry Potter in a way that caused me to recognize the significance of how it taps into the very fabric of reality was Dr. Jordan Peterson.
And he goes down into the underground, right, into the chaotic domain that's underneath the school in order to find the snake in its lair. Now, if I remember correctly, you tell me if I'm wrong. Doesn't he go down through a bathroom? Through a toilet? Right, well, so that's an indication of the Jungian dictum that what you need most is to be found where you least want to look.
I could feel it was true. It was as though he was just articulating that which I had not heard articulated before.
It's the Christian thought and the mythological substructure upon which the Harry Potter volume is based are drawing from the same underlying pool of ideas and symbols. And they're universally accessible. And you can tell that because if they weren't, that book wouldn't have sold how many million copies?
There's nothing that can improve one's life more than recognizing the power that comes from living in accordance with those lessons and those teachings, and you can learn those lessons. Dr. Jordan Peterson breaks down these very ideas, the oldest stories that we have. His new series, The Gospels, just dropped on DailyWire Plus, and right now you can access them for 50% off. In this 10-part series, Jordan brings together a group of world-class scholars to explore these stories, to extrapolate the wisdom in which they hold. Together, they explore the life of Jesus, the lessons within that story. It's a powerful, multifaceted conversation that anyone can find value in. You do not have to be religious to be able to recognize the wisdom that these stories hold. And what makes this interesting is that it fits within the larger body of work that Dr. Peterson has on DailyWire Plus. So if the ideas that I'm exploring in this video intrigue you, then just go to the DailyWire site. You can get 50% off. You don't even need a code to do that. You can access a plethora of his work exploring this very idea. So I would encourage you to go check that out. And thank you to DailyWire for sponsoring this video. And thank you, Dr. Peterson, for all of the work that you do.
And the movies. It's unbelievably, overwhelmingly powerful. She got kids to read 600-page books, like multiple volumes lining up for them. You got to ask yourself why. Silly stories about magical orphans. It's like, well, maybe not. Maybe people aren't so stupid.
People deeply care about Harry Potter because they don't want Harry Potter just removed from the world. And now we have seen HBO come full circle and recognize that the tide is turning and to say we're standing with JK Rowling.
JK Rowling has a right to express her personal views. We will remain focused on the development of the new series, which will only benefit from her involvement.
And we're building upon the story. The idea that there are things within this world that are not social constructs and they cannot be avoided. Avoid them at your peril. Stray off of that path at your own peril. To do so will bring about your own downfall. The person who's able to live in accordance and to recognize that there are immovable aspects to reality, as opposed to someone who thinks that it's all just social constructs, and you put those two different approaches pitted against each other, the other just bounces off of reality. Reality wins every time in the end.
Reality, as understood by science, is amazing and wonderful, and the fact that we can apprehend it, the fact that we can understand it.
Like mathematicians use mathematics to give a language to that which cannot otherwise be articulated. When a mathematician makes a discovery in mathematics, they're not inventing something new, they're discovering something that was already there, similar to an archaeologist uncovering an artifact. Give it a name, they make it possible to articulate it, and then it enters into knowledge, which allows other mathematicians to come along and build upon it and make the next discovery. That's what knowledge is. It's a discovery about an aspect of reality.
The beauty of understanding, the poetry of understanding is what I mean by science is the poetry of reality. I'm a man, but I feel a certain feminine, that doesn't worry me at all, but to then say, therefore I am a woman, is just a betrayal of language, of truth and the virtues of honest communication.
Someone like this Prime Minister of Scotland who thinks it's all just malleable, this is how it plays out. He brought about his own downfall.
The Harry Potter author posted on X the idea that Hamza Yousaf's political fate may now lie in the hands of Ash Regan, The woman, who left the SNP in disgust at its plan for gender self-ID, reminds me, they say Karma's a bee, but I hear she's a turf.
When do you take a stand? When do you put yourself on the line? When do you enter the unknown? It's a remarkable journey, and I think it reflects the stories that she's written, the hero's journey.
Well, JK Rowling's not backing down of her criticism of Scotland's First Minister. He's revealed that transgender women will be protected under the new misogyny laws.
And now we have misogyny laws. JK Rowling said, well, then come arrest me.
She's practically daring police to arrest her. Quote, freedom of speech and belief are at an end in Scotland if this accurate description of biological sex is deemed criminal.
The list goes on when it comes to those who argue that Hamza Yousaf's obsession with being woke has gone too far.
I clearly underestimated the level of hurt and upset that caused. Therefore, after spending the weekend reflecting, I've concluded that repairing our relationship across the political divide can only be done with someone else at the helm. I have therefore informed the SNP's National Secretary of my intention to stand down as party leader and ask that she commences a leadership contest for my replacement as soon as possible.